West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
It's 8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, July 1st, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Colorado's got a real issue here. One of its hospitals, the Children's Hospital, is facing a probe from the FBI for alleged genital mutilation of minors. The investigations are part of the Trump administration's push to enforce federal genital mutilation statutes, which is kind of unique in this case because it has to do more with female circumcision. But now the Trump administration using that to prevent hospitals from doing trans surgeries. We're going to talk with Erin Lee, the founder of Protect Kids Colorado, about this. And she's got a protest that she's going to be organizing against what the Children's Hospital of Colorado is doing. But now it's time for News and Comment with Mr. Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, News and Comment.
Good Tuesday morning, 67 and just gorgeous outside in Denver, expecting a high of 92 today. News is presented by the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Now is the time to stand with Israel. Call 800-301-1188. That's 800-301-1188, or go to 710knus.com and click on the big red Stand with Israel banner at the top of the page. Our top story, Scott Wilder, speaking of that, was on with Jeff and Billy last hour.
If you're a child waiting for a school bus, if you're a child on the monkey bars or on the slide or on the merry-go-round or on the teeter-totter, and that red alert goes off, you literally have 15 seconds to find shelter. So what IFCJ has done, what the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, also known as the Fellowship, has done is place these mobile bomb shelters very close to school bus stops. I can't imagine what it'd be like to be a little kid, 8 years old, 9 years old, with that sword of Damocles hanging over my head, no matter where I am, if I'm eating my breakfast, if I'm eating my lunch, if I'm walking the dog, if I'm in class, if I'm asleep. If that sound goes off, I always have to be ready to find shelters.
Does it for me. 800-301-1188. The Boulder DA's office says terrorist Mohammed Solomon is facing murder charges now, including extreme indifference. Boulder Jewish Community Center said Monday that one of the victims, Karen Diamond, passed away Wednesday from severe injuries. She was 82. Solomon is facing state charges in his next scheduled appearance in 2 weeks. The Senate remains in vote-a-rama mode this morning after lawmakers worked through the night on the one big, beautiful bill. Republican senators are trying to iron out differences over cuts to Medicaid and other measures that would be needed to fund the bill's tax cuts. 47 visiting Florida's Alligator Alcatraz this morning. They worked with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on the temporary facility. It was built in the Everglades near Miami-Dade County. Plenty of pythons and alligators await if anyone decides to escape, and that's not a good idea. Border czar Tom Homan is not happy with CNN promoting the ICE Block app, helping illegals avoid ICE.
And I just can't believe we're in a place where, a TV network like CNN is talking about this app and educating people on the existence of this app. And ICE law enforcement officers, like I said earlier, they're concentrating on public safety threats and national security threats. This is a dangerous job. And this app is going to give the bad guy heads up that we're coming, which means more bad guys are going to escape arrest, which makes this country less safe, which is a public safety issue. And on top of that, it's only a matter of time for a bad guy, which is like someone who threw a Molotov cocktail at officers in L.A., who the assault against ICE officers up over 500%. It's a matter of time before someone uses that and ambushes ICE officers. This is something we cannot tolerate, we can't stand for, so we're calling them out. And I'm begging the Department of Justice to look into this and hold people accountable. This puts ICE officers at great risk. We're at a place in time where the Democrats are vilifying ICE as racist and Nazis. And on top of this app, I'm scared to death for the ICE officers who go out there every day putting their lives on the line. Something needs to be done. I'm begging DOJ to look in this, take some.
And the commander in charge of National Guard troops in L.A. for immigration enforcement protests wants some service members reassigned to firefighting duty. A request has been sent to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to send 200 National Guard members to join the effort to battle wildfires in California, where it's currently peak fire season. Aurora police say 2 fatal stabbings on Sunday are likely connected. According to 9 News, Denver police believe Ricky Royable Smith is responsible for both incidents. He's also facing new accusations after allegedly murdering his cellmate Monday while in jail. Royable Smith was incarcerated for DUI and other related offenses and was previously out on parole for multiple felonies in Arapahoe County. He's currently being held without bond and scheduled to appear in court today in connection with the cellmate's death. Some 72 million Americans expected to travel for the Independence Day and 4th of July holiday weekend. AAA says most will travel by car, with the busiest travel days being tomorrow and Sunday, July 6th. Nuggets trade Michael Porter Jr. and the 2032 first-round pick for Cam Johnson and bring back Bruce Brown Jr. Astros at Coors tonight, taking on the Rockies, and the WNBA expanding to 18 teams. They may want to call the league and rename the league the Caitlin Clark Basketball Association because she is responsible for that. Nice job, Caitlin. 64 in Castle Rock, 66 in Glendale, 67 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A typical way to start July here for Denver in the Front Range. Warm temperatures, partly cloudy skies, and a few thunderstorms. Highs today near 90. A few widely scattered afternoon and evening thunderstorms. Lows tonight near 60. Warming to the low to mid-90s Wednesday. An isolated thunderstorm late. A better chance of thunderstorms, 80s and low 90s Thursday. Upper 80s with a few late-day thunderstorms for the 4th of July Friday. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free, no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
All right, Fox News reporting that the FBI is launching probes into 3 children's hospitals for alleged genital mutilation of minors. The FBI has initiated criminal investigations into 3 children's hospitals after commitments from Attorney General Pam Bondi that the Trump administration would enforce federal statutes outlawing female genital mutilation to protect children from often irreversible sex change surgeries. The investigations target providers who work at Boston's Children's Hospital, Children's Hospital of Colorado, and Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, according to sources familiar with the investigation who spoke to Fox. These hospitals have been among some of the foremost providers of sex change procedures for minors in America over the last several years, according to the source. The number that Colorado has produced is, let me pull that up here, a little shocking, but it is stuff the Trump administration's diving into. And I was intrigued by the law they're using to prosecute and investigate here, because it has to do with female genital mutilation, what was typically taking place in some cultures with regards to female circumcision. But now it's being applied to gender transition. Colorado's hospital, Children's Hospital of Colorado, had 120 minor sex change patients and performed 13 transition surgeries on minors. The hospital had 108 puberty blocker and hormone patients who were minors and wrote 860 sex change related prescriptions for minors. Well, she's got the pulse on all of this. Give us an update, and she's organizing an effort as well, a protest Wednesday against Children's Hospital here in Colorado. Erin Lee, founder of Protect Kids Colorado. Good morning, Erin. Thanks for joining the program.
Yeah, good morning.
Hey, Jeff and Bill, thanks for having me. Thanks for covering this important topic.
So let's talk about what you're planning to do Wednesday to raise awareness. And have you heard any more about the investigation that's taking place?
Yes, so I, along with Jamie Reed, the famous whistleblower out of the Missouri Children's Clinic, she's organized a protest at all three of these hospitals, LA, Denver, and Boston, who are three of the worst offenders that if the FBI is investigating, then they have surely done something to catch their attention. And I think it's important to note that female genital mutilation includes the puberty blockers and the hormones. You know, for example, a chemical lobotomy is no better than a surgical lobotomy, and the same goes for chemical sterilization and castration of these children with these drugs. So it's surgeries in addition to these chemical castration drugs that, as you said, are being provided at astronomical rates to kids here in Colorado.
That's Erin Lee. Erin's the founder of Protect Kids Colorado. So I'm intrigued by the use of this law, because it seems like the intent was originally to stop this female circumcision that was taking place, I think, in some African cultures. I could be wrong about that, but that seems to be where it was coming from. And so this law, which was addressed, I think, in the 2013s, maybe updated in 2021, was originally about that. This seems to be a nuanced way to use that by the FBI, but technically there's no federal law banning at least the transition of a male, right? This is just female. It's a unique use of this law by the FBI, but seems to me it's calling for a federal law to ban trans surgeries for minors. I know we're seeing them in places like Tennessee, and that was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court. But after reading this, I'm like, well, goodness, we need to have a federal law. Your thoughts?
Well, and it's a common consensus in the medical community that these gender-affirming care, which to me is just a euphemism for mutilation, is female genital mutilation. In fact, Colorado's Dr. Travis Morrell, has probably been on your show before, who's started Colorado Principled Physicians and is a senior fellow with Do No Harm. A few years ago, he actually rallied the Colorado Medical Board, I believe, or one of the big organizations of doctors, to define these procedures as FGM, female genital mutilation, and about 80% of the doctors agreed with him. He had the vote. And then a professor at University of Colorado Boulder rallied his students, let his students know that they had the authority to vote on this issue, and so they overwhelmed the system and kind of, put that vote into the trash. But the consensus among all the doctors was, yes, this is female genital mutilation. Now, most doctors won't talk about it. It's a very, it's become a controversial issue, as I know all too well. People are afraid to talk about it, but there is a consensus in the medical community that these procedures do qualify as female genital mutilation. I mean, it wrecks the sexual function of their organs, and it certainly applies to boys as well. But when you give a child testosterone, not to get too graphic, but it does things to their organs, like it makes their clitoris so big that it is painful, that there are other problems that occur, that they cannot be sexually functioning for the rest of their life. If you talk to these detransitioners, some of them have lost sexual function completely. Some of them have been rendered sterilized. Some of them have pain, 24 hours a day in their genitals. So it absolutely qualifies. It's just that this is such a new issue that we have got to take these steps to define this gender-affirming care as mutilation.
That's Erin Lee. Erin's the founder of Protect Kids Colorado. Now, Fox got a comment from Children's Hospital of Colorado that said it has, quote, never provided transgender surgeries for those under 18, adding that 2 years ago, the hospital stopped providing these surgeries for patients over 18. Instead, starting in 2023, the hospital decided to begin referring patients to outside providers for such services. This is according to Colorado Newsline. What are your thoughts on what Colorado's or Children's Hospital of Colorado has been doing?
Well, that's patently false. In fact, I think you referenced the Do No Harm database, and I encourage people to go to stoptheharmdatabase.com to see the actual numbers that are based on public insurance information. These don't even include self-pays and Kaiser Permanente. But they found that from 2019 to 2023, at least 13 children had been surgically mutilated. But it's important to point out that they are fraudulently coding these procedures. That everyone who's on the inside investigating this knows that they use the wrong medical codes in order to get away with these procedures without raising a red flag. So we've proven that they've been surgically mutilating kids. That's public evidence. So they're blatantly lying. But I think people should understand that they are fraudulently and incorrectly coding these medical procedures in order to keep it under the radar.
How do they get paid for those then, Erin Lee? If they're fraudulently coding them, the insurance companies wouldn't pay for them. They would push back. So are these independently paid for surgeries? So someone comes in and just writes the check? Is there a foundation? Because again, in the processes and procedures, even if the hospital is miscoding them, that's not okay with the insurance company, and that would be an investigation of fraud or not allowed.
No, I think that's what's happening right now by the FBI. But I mean,
the insurance company would have the fraud. The insurance company would start a fraud investigation. It have zero to do with the FBI per se.
Well, how do they know that it's being fraudulently coded? First of all, but let's refer back to Senate Bill 129 that was passed this year, because our legislators have been passing laws to prevent these medical providers from being held accountable. So this year they passed Senate Bill 129, which actually makes it illegal for anyone to respond to a subpoena for an investigation into these doctors. So a federal investigation, a medical board investigation, an insurance investigations. Insurance companies are now forbade from responding to a subpoena for an investigation into these doctors who provide, quote, gender-affirming care. So I think that there's a lot of forces at play here, and our legislature has helped fortify the protections for these doctors and made it impossible for anyone to even investigate what they're doing with these children. And so I'm glad the FBI is taking the route that they are, because it allows them to circumvent those laws and to investigate from the FGM perspective versus, very blatantly investigating the procedures on their face.
That's Erin Lee, founder of Protect Kids Colorado. Erin, were there examples out of Texas where some of the hospitals were inappropriately coding this in order to hide it with insurance agencies, or am I just wrong about that?
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, there's a Dr. Etan Heim who was he was attacked by Biden's government for blowing the whistle on this incorrect coding operation that was happening at Texas Children's. This is a young guy who was in his residency and was terrified to come forward. He was a whistleblower, and then he was exposed and attacked by the federal government for exposing that fraud that was happening in the state of Texas.
Erin Lee, founder of Protect Kids Colorado. So we know that Tennessee and their law was upheld at the U.S. Supreme Court. How about Colorado? Where are we with regards to bans on procedures for minors? You have this federal law. You have the Tennessee law. You have 20 plus other states that have said we're not going to do these types of procedures on kids because they're still developing. It's too early. It has long-term impacts, that type of thing. Again, we're not dealing with consenting adults, 18 plus, what they want to do with their body. We're dealing with minors. So in light of all that, this atmosphere, the changes that are taking place, the U.S. Supreme Court, where's Colorado?
Yeah, how insane that we're even having this conversation, to me, that we're talking about having to set laws to not mutilate the healthy bodies of children for their mental health distress. But 27 states have outlawed these procedures. 23 of those are full bans on the hormones as well as the surgeries. My organization, Protect Kids Colorado, is running a ballot initiative. We've already cleared it through Title Board. We will start signature gathering at the end of August to just ban the surgery portion of these procedures on children, just to say let them wait until they're 18 to make a decision about irreversible medical procedure. When you start these hormones, you cannot backtrack. They're not a pause button. When you get a double mastectomy, you'll never be able to breastfeed. You can't just magically put your breasts on. Hysterectomies, you can't just put your organs back in your body. So we're running a ballot initiative to become the first blue state to do this by the will of the people, to outlaw these procedures, again, on minors. We are a live and let live state. We are traditionally a libertarian-minded state. And most people agree that children should not be making irreversible decisions about their bodies when their brains aren't fully developed and they're not capable of informed consent. So we would hopefully become state number 28 to outlaw these procedures and do it by the will of the people.
That's Erin Lee, founder of Protect Kids Colorado. What's your response to those that would say, well, don't we believe in parental rights? If parents want to work with their children to transition, why shouldn't they have the right to do so? Your response?
I'm all for parental rights, but no parent has a right to abuse their child, especially not physically abuse their child. If a parent is beating their child, then the system intervenes. If a parent is surgically mutilating their child, then the system should intervene. And it's important to point out, we have several organizations here in Colorado. We are the trans trafficking state out of all 50 states. It's a commonly known in other states. I actually was informed by a parent in Wisconsin when a drag queen introduced her middle schooler to the Transcontinental Pipeline. There are organizations like the Transcontinental Pipeline, like Rainbow Villages, who exist only to relocate kids to Colorado. In fact, One Colorado, at testimony in the House during Senate Bill 129, bragged that there's been a 50% increase in parents bringing their kids across state lines to get these procedures done, and that their request went from $20 a month to $600 a month to relocate children here to the state of Colorado for these procedures. So other states are shutting it down. Yes, parents are bringing their kids here, but parents do not have a right to abuse their kids, especially not physically. And I should also say that so many parents have been bullied into this. Our culture has been captured by gender ideology. I was bullied with the myth, do you want a living son or a dead daughter? You must transition your kid or else they'll kill themselves. And that has been disproven. Even the ACLU lawyer at the Scarametti case at the Supreme Court admitted there is no proof that suicide rates decrease when you medicalize these children. So many parents have been bullied and gaslit into going along with this for fear of their child committing suicide. And we need to make an environment where parents they don't feel like they have no option but to medicalize their children. Most of these parents are not, full in on medicalizing their kids. They're just afraid, and they're doing what this hijacked medical system tells them must be done.
That's Erin Lee. She's the founder of Protect Kids Colorado. You talked about 13 transition surgeries that were performed at Children's Hospital of Colorado before they were outlawed, before they decided not to perform in 2023. Do we know if they were performed on girls or boys? Do we know if they are top surgeries or bottom surgeries? Do we have any information about how they classified those surgeries?
That's a good question. I don't know that we have that information. I would assume that Do No Harm was able to access that through public insurance data, but they did not release male or female, top or bottom, which to me are such euphemisms. Top surgery is a double mastectomy. Bottom surgery is full genital mutilation. I refute those terms entirely because, again, they're euphemisms for something far more gruesome than is being portrayed. No, we don't know. But again, a double mastectomy is still a life-altering, irreversible surgery. So even if it's not affecting their genitals, it's still affecting their bodies permanently.
Do we know how many of those potential top surgeries could have been done on boys who identify as boys?
Well, that would be sex-affirming care, not transgender-affirming care. Two different things.
But it would be, it would fall under this umbrella of the procedures in that department. So it could be looped in. It could be looped in, couldn't it?
I don't believe so, because it wouldn't be at the transgender center. So the True Center is for transgender-affirming procedures. That would be a sex-affirming procedure that would not happen in a facility that aims to only transition kids' sex. So it wouldn't have happened in the True Center.
Look, you're talking about guys that have big breasts that are getting a breast reduction, right, Bill?
Yeah,
like that,
I'm just looking at that because we see many times in the statistics that are put forward do include those surgeries when they talk about gender-affirming care, and that would be the issue, because gender-affirming care, those surgeries would fall under that umbrella. So I'm just curious as far as how they were classified and how that sits. I don't know how they assembled these 13 surgeries. That's why I'm asking about the information and the breakdown of them, because until I want to be upset about it, I need to know what I'm supposed to be upset about as far as the breakdown. And I just don't see it. It seems like we're making some assumptions on some of these. And there are 13
you have
surgeries.
two very different claims, which is why I think you have an investigation going on, because you have Fox News and National Review reporting these numbers, like 13 trans surgeries on minors, 108 puberty blockers and hormone patients who are minors, and 860 sex change-related prescriptions for minors. And then you go and look at the statements from Children's Hospital Colorado, and they're like, "Nah, we're not doing this." They said it has never provided transgender surgeries for those under 18. So two very different claims. Erin Lee, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to use the correct language. Again, there's transgender-affirming care and there's sex-affirming care, and we need to be able to distinguish the two. I actually went through this at Title Board when they questioned us about this issue. Sex-affirming care is affirming your sex characteristics as you were born. Gender-affirming care is only exists to transition your sex. And so they're two different categories. For example, if a woman were to get breast reconstruction after breast cancer, that's not gender-affirming care. That's sex-affirming care. They're two very different things, and it's important for us to use the correct language. And to your point, Jeff, we have proof that they've done these things on children. So for them to come out and say that they've never done it, it didn't happen, we have proof to the contrary. That only proves that they're lying and furthers my theory that they are fraudulently coding in order to do this in secret.
That's Erin Lee. She's the founder of Protect Kids Colorado. We're talking about a headline coming out of Fox News. The FBI launching probes into 3 children's hospitals for alleged gender or genital mutilation of minors. Erin, so if not Children's Hospital of Colorado, who else does these? You talked about this organization called the Transcontinental Pipeline that's helping people move here. Are there other hospitals? Are there other clinics that are doing this? Maybe on minors, maybe not on minors. Give us a lay of the land of actual trans procedures taking place in Colorado.
Well, Trinidad, Colorado has long been known as the transgender surgery capital of the world. That was one of the first places to perform these procedures on adults decades ago. And so Colorado has long been the place for these experimental procedures. But according to this Stop the Harm database, 54 Colorado hospitals have performed these procedures. It's just that Colorado children, their numbers are 6 times higher than the number 2 offender in Colorado. So that's the reason that the True Center at Children's Hospital is being held accountable over the others. But there are 54 Colorado hospitals, again, according to public insurance data. That doesn't include self-pays, which is the majority of how these are performed is through self-pay. 54 Colorado hospitals perform these procedures on minors.
And you're leading
minors for 17 and younger.
Now, when you're talking about procedures, are you including prescriptions, or are you only talking surgeries?
Yes, prescriptions as well.
Okay, that may change the number. Okay, cool. That's
but
fine.
again, I have to emphasize, like, the surgeries they're horrific. They're Mengele-like. They are butchery. But these drugs, have very similar effects on children's bodies. When you stop the healthy puberty of a child, it doesn't just have effects on their genitals, it has effects on their bone density, on their brain development.
Yeah, but to be fair, though, Erin, the bone density does come back depending on the prescription they've taken, especially with calcium supplements. Yes, it does. It's been shown that does happen once you start taking it. Stop taking it. There's some of those that do have some reverse.
Why would you ever want to do something like that to it? Why would you decrease a child's bone density during normal development? Like, there's no justification. Even if it is reversible, and I maintain that it's not, why would you ever slow the normal bodily development process of a child for a mental health issue?
Well, I think that's where we get into the fulcrum of disagreement, is that you believe it's a mental health issue, and I firmly do not believe that it is a mental health issue. So that's the issue. That's where we come down and we disagree on this, is that you believe this is a mental issue, and I don't. I believe this is biological. And so that would be the difference in the questions. So, and some of those hormone treatments can be reversed later on if you stop taking the treatments. That's why they take the pills in perpetuity. That's why people that have transitioned to one sex or the other continue to take the hormone replacement pills throughout their life, because they need them. Otherwise, it goes the other direction. That's why it happens.
Bill, if it's biological, why did we go from a 0.02% transgender population 2 decades ago to now, my school district, for example, claims that 30% of the students in our district are transgender or non-binary.
Yeah.
So if it's biological, then why have we seen such an astronomical increase in kids identifying as transgender? And I'm talking a 300% increase just in the last 12 years.
If I would jump us into the Wayback Machine, into the 1950s and 1960s, and replace transgender with gay, you'd have the same numbers, and we'd be asking the same question. No, but hang on. But the argument that you're making is the same, and that's what I'm saying, is that at one point in this nation, we held that being homosexual was a mental illness and a choice. We do not hold that right now.
Yeah,
and
but
so
do you think 30%
of
kids in her school district are trans?
Probably not.
So then you have to admit there's an element then that's mental. Sorry, go ahead, Erin.
No, I was going to say, does being gay require physical mutilation? Again, when you conflate the two, being gay is just accepting who someone is.
Again, Erin, that's not addressing the comment that I had. My comment was that our complaints and the way that we're talking about transgender kids is the exact same way that we talked about homosexuals a few decades ago. And it was, and what I was addressing was your specific statement of, before we didn't have a lot of, now we have a lot of. That statement Bill, was made when people started coming out of the closet.
If you're a conservative Christian, you can say that it's mental as well on all sides. But I mean, to the point I just made, though, if you say that not all 30% are biologically trans, then you are admitting that there's a percentage that are doing this out of mental health issues.
I wouldn't say necessarily mental health issues, but yes, I do believe that there is a percentage that is not actually trans at that age. Yes, and that may feel that way. Yes, there is a percentage. That's why I am not an advocate for surgeries or invasive procedures of any kind until they're 18. I've been very open about that. But the idea that someone at that age can feel trans or be trans, I believe is absolutely factual and mostly probably biological. Again, I can't point to everything that I can based on biological sex for homosexuality, but I see many of the indicators that were coming out at the same time when homosexuality began to be more accepted by society. I see many of the same indicators biologically, and so that's what I'm going with this. I'm just not willing to say that I know for a fact that this is a mental illness, because at one point in this country, our society was certain that homosexuality was a mental illness. Now,
Erin,
we don't.
Your response?
Well, having helped thousands of parents through the situation that I went through, which was my child experiencing mental health distress as a result of social contagion and indoctrination, I can say that every person that I've ever incurred, even these detransitioners who medically mutilated their bodies and then came out on the other side, have all said this was a mental health issue. I was suffering from physical abuse, depression, autism. In my child's case, it was just puberty. I think it's normal for people to have body dysmorphia. Gender dysphoria is real. Let me start there. Gender dysphoria is real. It's a mental health issue. It's a struggle over your body. I experienced it as a teenager, body dysmorphia through, bulimia, through feeling like I was fat. That's what we're experiencing here. So 100% of my experience, even with detransitioners who medicalize their body, they will tell you that this is a mental health issue, that at the time they were certain that they must be a male, they must be a female, they're born in the wrong body, I have to medicalize. But 100% of the time they come out on the other side and go, I just had mental health issues that I needed to work through, and I needed people to help me through it. And we have a system now where we jump straight to medicalization instead of helping kids through their mental health distress. In fact, it's illegal for a counselor to help a child be comfortable in their natal sex in the state of Colorado. The only option is to push them into this identity and to medicalize them.
I disagree that your statement. It sounded like you were saying that 100% of the people that transition have regrets, et cetera, on the other end, because the information that I've seen is those above the age of 18, less than 1% regret transitioning. So, I mean, while you may have talked to thousands, and I don't discount that or say that's not true, but what I'm saying is that of the larger population, if we talk about surgeries that happen, it's actually more accepted and has a better success rate than many other surgeries. My mom just went through knee replacement surgery. Transition surgery for people over the age of 18 has a better success rate based on percentages than knee replacement surgery.
According to whom? Who do you get your data from?
I'm sorry, I didn't have it in front of me, but no, it runs right around 1%. And that's a fairly successful. Yeah. There's not a lot of, detransition on the other end. But again, that's over 18, and that's the couching that I'm putting in this statement. That's why I'm focused on making sure this is okay for someone that's 18 or over. We can have a debate about the kids, but over 18, it seems to be fairly accepted by the individuals that have gone through the process.
Now, Erin Lee, founder of Protect Kids Colorado, Wednesday, which is tomorrow, from 11 to 1, y'all are going to be outside of the Children's Hospital of Colorado. Talk about that, and are people welcome to attend it?
Yes, we welcome people. We're taking a stand here in Colorado and letting people know that we're not okay with what's happening in that building. And I think the main goal is to draw attention to it. Most people just don't know what's happening here in the state, that we are the child mutilation capital of the country, that this many children have been chemically and surgically, mutilated at Children's Hospital. And so we will be outside the front entrance 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. I have plenty of signs. It is not a political rally or protest. It is not, religious or politically affiliated. We just want to educate people heading into the hospital with common sense facts about what's happening in that building. So tomorrow, Children's Hospital in Aurora, main entrance, 11 to 1. All are welcome.
So grateful for your wonderful work with Protect Kids Colorado. Thank you for the ballot initiative. You are a force here in the state on behalf of kids and parents and families. Thank you for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show and having a fun, spicy conversation.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Take care.
That's Erin Lee, founder of Protect Kids Colorado. All right, let's talk L&L heating and air conditioning. It's getting hot out there. It's going to be warmer today than it was yesterday. And then Wednesday, it's going to be 93. So if your air conditioner is working hard right now, and maybe that line's freezing up or you got some problems with it, give L&L Heating and Air Conditioning a call. Believe me, I've tried the big corporate companies. They're not great. L&L Heating and Air Conditioning delivers personalized custom service. And listen to this, no emergency charges, $0 trip fee. They'll provide a free programmable thermostat or carbon monoxide detector with a new furnace or air conditioner installation. Price match value, guarantee on equipment, free estimates, licensed and insured, and 5-year labor warranty. Everything at our house works great. Absolutely love L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. We couldn't be happier. Here's their phone number, 720-851-1691, 720-851-1691, online at bestdenverhvac.com, bestdenverhvac.com. I'm sure glad we called him. That number again, 720-851-1691. We'll continue. Phone lines are open. We'll get to you all next. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're talking an investigation by the FBI launched on 3 children's hospitals, including one here in Colorado, for alleged genital mutilation of minors. It stems from a federal law that prevents female circumcision. This is a law that was practiced in some communities, and it's being now applied to transgender surgery, saying that what's taking place, whether it's the hormones or the actual surgeries, are mutilating women's genitalia. And as a result, this law applies, and these hospitals are being investigated. Now, Children's Hospital of Colorado says this is not happening. So you're getting 2 very different opinions. Let's go to the phone lines. Ben Morrison. Good morning, Ben. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah. I generally say this has always been a problem where the conservatives are in search of a problem, that doesn't really exist on a large, widespread scale. It's like they're in search of a solution for a problem that's not really that big of a thing. Like transgender people make up 0.3% of the population. So that's 1 in 3,000 people. It's just not really a thing that's really out there and very predominant. And you guys always go off of this stuff, and it's okay, it's like that lady that was just on here. She's like, well, there was 13 cases, presumably, if her information is right, since 2019. Okay, so in the last 6 years, that's 2 a year. Whoopity-doo.
Yeah, and the statistics are also showing 860 sex change-related prescriptions being given out. And then she also pointed out that the school district that she's a part of, where she's had battles, Pooter, is saying that a third, 30% of the kids in the school are some form of transgender LGBTQ. A third. So is it that small?
But is there... Yes, I think it is that small, because is there anything that's actually going through with that? Is there any actual action that's going through with that? That's what I would want to see information on.
Or kids identifying differently?
Yeah, I would like to see if there's any medical action, or if there's anything that's actually substantial that goes through with that, because I don't think that exists. I think it's fake, it's false information.
You don't think kids are transing?
I think some kids are transing.
Yeah, and I think,
but I don't think at that level.
Yeah, Ben. Now, when they talk, and I've heard the Pooter School District thing come up all the time about 30%. What I'm not seeing inside the Pooter School District, even though they say 30% of the kids identify as trans, what I'm not seeing is issues about transgenders in bathrooms. What I'm not seeing in the Pooter School District are issues with transgenders in locker rooms. What I'm not seeing in the Pooter School District is transgender athletes. So what I'm looking for is, I've seen this survey, but I've seen no other hard data from the school district that shows they're dealing with 30% of the student population being trans. I haven't seen any of that, and those would be questions. What do we do with bathrooms? What do we do here? What do we do with field trips? What do we do with sports teams? What do we do in gym class? None of those conversations have come up or been made public. So that's why I have a lot of hesitancy behind that 30% number, but it comes out every single time we have this conversation.
That lady said some comments that seemed to be very questionable and should require additional scrutiny, because I don't think a lot of her information's right. I think she's got a lot of stuff that's bogus. I have
Wait, what did
a
she
master's...
say that was bogus? She's quoting the Pooter's own numbers. That's not her numbers. That's the Pooter School District's own numbers. And she's quoting other news agencies that have reported the number of prescriptions, trans surgeries. I don't think she said a single thing that was wrong.
Well, it seems what's going on, here's the science behind it. There's a lot of people in the right-wing community that think there's 2 genders, and that's scientifically false. There is Klinefelter syndrome. There's Turner syndrome. I mean, I can provide examples of people.
How many genders are there?
There's several, because there's
many?
People that can have an XX.
You said scientifically. How many are there?
Well, I have a master's degree in microbiology, Jeff, so maybe you should talk a little bit less now.
Well, I'm just asking you a question. You're the master. How many are there?
So there's combinations where there's XXY, there's situations where there's XXX, there's XXXX.
Yeah, from my information, there's
called Down syndrome.
4 basic subsets, and then there's some others that go off from there. Yeah,
there's others that go off with that, and there's people like, I can provide examples. Caster Semenya, who was a sprinter from South Africa, has inverted testicles, and she also has ovaries.
Yeah, so
that's
you guys
an example of someone who's intersex.
You're rooting this in biology, which is what conservatives are saying.
I know, which is science. But science is showing that kind of like there's more than two.
But so can you change your gender like others are saying? And this was the argument at the U.S. Supreme Court, was that you could change your gender on a daily basis. So you could be they, them. Do you disagree or agree with the idea that you can change your gender from he, him to they, them on a daily basis? Or is it rooted in biology?
No, I don't. But there's also people like, for example, Caster Semenya, who fall in this gray area where they have.
So there's a biological component to gender.
But also she has a biological component where she's both, because she has inverted testicles. She also has ovaries, and she gets to choose like what she wants to identify as.
Yeah, Ben, I appreciate the call. We're just up against a break here, but I think that's part of the challenge is that it is rooted in biology. That's what conservatives are saying, and it seems that's what Ben agrees to. All right, we got to get to a break. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
It's a question of which biology. This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Let's go back to the phone lines. David, Aurora. Good morning, David. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Oh, thanks. Listening to both the interview you did and the last caller, I read a book about 25 years ago. It came out just right at the turn of the century called Our Stolen Future. And in it, it described how kids were their sex organs as well as other soft tissue were being affected by pollution. And that it was getting to such a point that I think at the time, 25 years ago, it was saying up to 25% of the kids were damaged. And it talked specifically about exposure to benzene and formaldehyde. And formaldehyde is in carpet padding. And if people would buy a brand new carpet, mom's pregnant, they go out and they buy a brand new carpet, and then she's wandering around the house breathing the outgassed formaldehyde in the padding, that she was going to have some soft tissue damage to the fetus. And so what the interview you did didn't discuss that at all. And if she is accurate, and I'm not going to say she is, it would explain that the polluters have not stopped polluting and that they've damaged a larger and larger percentage of the population, and that the school districts are forced to come up with 3 bathrooms or whatnot to deal with this rise in
Interesting.
Kids
David from Aurora, I really appreciate the call. We're up against the end of the hour here, but saying that there may be environmental causes. Something to consider. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is KNUS.